Welcome to the Cheer Athlete. This week, we're going to talk a little controversial topic, and it gets a little political. So if you choose to tune out, I understand, but please listen to the whole thing because I think maybe you'll understand where my arguments come from as a physical therapist and where my disagreements. We're going to talk the presidential fitness test. So listen in. It's going to be a good one, and I hope you get something out of it. Welcome to the Cheer Athlete Podcast, where we bring coaches, parents, and athletes expert tips and advice to help keep cheerleaders healthy, strong, and at the top of their game. Now let's go. So if you haven't paid attention to the news lately, President Trump is reinstating the presidential fitness test. And this looks at norms across the country and compares kids against each other to see where kids are at and where they fall. Now, this is where the political end comes in. I am 99.9% opposed to the policies of this administration. So that's if you choose to not listen to me, I understand. That's your choice. I don't, however, think this is a terrible idea. But then I just did some research, and there actually is a physical standard test that they have already in place. So let's do a little background. And then I'm going to tell you what I recommend at the end, because I do think having some normative values and looking at what ways to keep our kids healthy and make sure they're safe when they're doing their activities, I think that's very important. So there's the 0.1% that I actually do agree with President Trump. So back in the 1966, the presidential fitness test was started, and it involved things like sit-ups, pull-ups, push-ups, and a 1 mile run and a sit and reach test. And this was in effect until I don't know when it actually went out of style. Certainly when I was in school, it was in place. And I can remember having nightmares before having to do that 1 mile run, because I could do the sit-ups, no problem. I had the flexibility to touch my toes, no problem. I could eke out a number of push-ups. I wasn't excelling at them, but I could get the pull-ups, the push-ups, and I struggled on the pull-ups. And I never really worried, but that run, man, I just didn't know if I could compete it. And you had to do it in X amount of time. I don't even remember what it was, but I remember all through high school, I would wake up having nightmares about having to take that run. And that's not why I'm necessarily opposed to this particular test. Because in some ways, I think it looks at capacity, and it does say where are you at? But it doesn't necessarily look at the main criteria to see if somebody actually is healthy. So the most recent test that they've had started in about 2012. And let's see if we can find exactly what it was called. I have it here. Presidential Youth Fitness Program, which was in place, and that would look more at the overall health and wellness of an athlete or a student. And I don't actually know what was involved in that, but I think health and wellness looks at more than just physical capacity and what we can do physically. Someone that has a healthy youth, is able to actively move. They are getting a number of steps in per day. They are not sitting and watching TV all the time. They're able to get up and down, and they are within a healthy weight range. They measure by BMI, and that's not actually a good objective measure either, but it involves overall health, and that incorporates what are you eating? What are you feeding your kids? I do think all of that is important in our general overall health, and food and hydration is absolutely going to feed into how you feel so that you can perform and do the different tasks. So I think I don't think it should just be a fitness test. Now, the other piece of this, I think we need to look at from a physical therapy standpoint, and because my background is in movement screening, I think it's really important for us to include part of the movement screen as part of this test. And if you're listening, if you have a connection and you can forward this, let's share this episode out. Dear President Trump, if you hear me, please consider adding an actual movement screen and functional capacity screen onto the presidential fitness test before they actually get to that point. Because if we don't have the fundamental movement patterns down and we don't actually have the capacity to do the tasks that we're asking, how in the world are they going to be able to complete this? There's a lot of adults that can't complete this test. You know, a lot of adults can't do a full-on push-up. A lot of adults can't do. I can't do a pull-up unassisted, but I can do unassisted, and I can certainly train for it if I actually put the effort in. I struggle to run a mile still, but I can make myself do it. But you know, at that age, that was my big fear, and again, it gave me nightmares. I think it was, I don't remember if it was fourth grade or fifth grade, but we did the presidential test and we had to go then do the pull-ups. And like, I think I could just barely eke one out. And it's always been a goal of mine to be able to do them unassisted. And I don't train them enough. So I know that's why I don't have them. But it's something that like you have to have the mobility to do, and you have to have the baseline control. So in my research, back when I was in school, I did my research on the functional movement screen and an injury reduction for cheerleaders, and it did show that using the movement screen would likely reduce the risk of an injury in cheerleading. What is a baseline? And this is like a baseline movement screen. My views have changed a bit since then, and maybe expanded a little bit more. And I'm still learning every day. But the basic movement screen. Can you stand on one leg and kind of move your foot over a string that goes about shin height or just below shin height? Can you squat with your arms overhead and get your butt to the ground? Can you lunge with your hands behind your back and bring one knee to the ground and then come back up? Then we look at mobility. We look at shoulder mobility. Can you reach one hand over your head and one hand behind your back to be able to get them, you know, within 2 hands distance? Can you lie on the ground and lift your leg up at least 70 degrees? Can you do a push-up from the ground up, going just like a strict dead up push-up, not repetitive, but just one time pushing straight up? And then a rotary stability where you're on hands and knees and reaching like a bird dog. And there's nuances in these different tests, but those are the 7 different movement patterns that we need to be able to do. And that should give you a baseline. Like, can you do it? Can you not do it? And do you have it perfectly? And does it hurt? Because if it hurts, then you shouldn't be going and running a mile. If it hurts to lift your leg, or if it hurts to go down onto one knee, you shouldn't go and lift a mile. You got to figure out why. Why does it hurt? Let's make that better. And if you can't do it because you don't have the control and the stability, then let's make that better. That gives you a guideline for how to progress and to move. The next step in there is a functional capacity screen. And I have to admit, I haven't taken this part of the functional movement programs yet. I'll put a link into functional movement systems so you guys can like look at their website, because they have a lot of great information that if you're a coach, it would be amazing for you to take and start to learn that, so you can really see, do your athletes have what it takes to do what we're asking them. So the baseline of the movement pyramid, do they have the baseline movement? Then do they have the capacity to actually do what we're asking them to do? These are things like a Y balance test, which is standing on one leg and kind of reaching the other leg forward and out to the side and diagonal. It's jumping with 2 feet. And, can we jump as high as you can with your arms, without your arms? And then a hop test. These are different functional tests to see, like, do they actually have the capacity to then go and do a sport like running? And that would be the top tier of it. So the pieces of the presidential fitness test are not terrible. Like, yes, I think all kids should be able to do a push-up, at least one, and from the ground up. And I don't love the sit-ups, because the research has shown that sit-ups potentially could be bad for your back. I'd rather see them do a plank, or a front plank and a side plank. And can they hold that and maintain that? The other piece in the functional capacity is a postural stability. Can they hold under load and maintain their posture? Or are they just jumping forward and kind of losing it or leaning to the side? And so I think, the planks would be a much better representation for core strength than a crunch and a full on sit up. I think looking at the active straight leg raiser, can they touch their toes from standing would be better than looking at just can they do it seated, because the two legs together doesn't give us all the information. And it also includes your back. So if you can't do it, is it your legs, is it your back, and you're just going to force and stretch your legs? There's a lot of different pieces there. So looking at a straight leg raise versus a sit and reach might be a better indicator of where their flexibility is. I like the idea of a pull-up. Again, I find them really hard, and unless you have modifications, you know how to do it assisted and be able to train for it, it's hard. Maybe we could do a hang test instead. How long can they hang there for? Before, my Strong First coaches would encourage me to allow me to do pull-ups, they were encouraging me to just do hang drills. And so we would hang for 30 seconds, and then we could try assisted, which is using a band. So just getting there and hanging, I think that's fantastic. But, requiring the kids to be able to do a pull-up might be tough for a 5 to 18-year-old. And so looking at that, can they just get there and hang, and do they have that grip strength to do that? I think that would be solid. I don't think I think the idea of a fitness test is a good idea. And because kids, they're getting away with gym class. So if you're going to do a presidential fitness test, then we need to put gym class back in the curriculum, and they need to be having it every day. They need to be able to get out to recess and have things like monkey bars and swings that they can push and climb and, climb onto. And I think we've gotten away from that. And, they may not have that outdoor recess, or they might let them run around, and that's all fine. I think that should be unstructured time by all means. But we need to have some physical activity into the day, because when kids are sitting there from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and all they do is get up and go to lunch, their brain may be working great, but their brain's going to fry if they're not actually getting some movement in and getting some blood flow going. So 100%, like, what's the outcome that we want to see with this presidential fitness test? If the outcome is we want kids that are moving better, that are feeling better in their bodies, then we find where they're lacking, and we're going to help them get better at that in gym class and in sports, then I'm all for it. If it's just a matter of putting one kid against another kid and they need to compare themselves to each other, I don't like that. I'm all for competition, in sport, but when it comes to just general health and fitness, like, let's just see what we can do for ourselves. That's the piece that I hope that they maintain. I'd love to know your thoughts, and are your kids, how do your kids look at gym class, and what do they think about the different tests that they have to do in gym class? Does your cheer gym, do they do a movement screen? Do they have that functional capacity? The top tier of that pyramid, we go movement, we go functional capacity, and then sports specific. So before we're looking at, can they stand on a BOSU and lift their leg up into a heel stretch? What does their movement look like on the ground? Can they do an active straight leg raise? Cheerleaders need to be able to do it to like 120 degrees. Flyers need to. And a base needs to be able to squat. Can they, and a flyer needs to squat too to be able to get in a load in position, but just in talking mobility, if they can do that, can they actually do a jump? Can they hold weight under postural control? And can they, before you're putting a flyer into a base's hand, can they actually stand with load in their hands to the amount that they're going to be holding that flyer up and maintain their posture? If not, do you think that they should be they should be holding another person up in the air? Like, there's a lot that goes into postural stability, and the technique, 100%. I'm not here to teach technique, but the technique is very important. And I think you can train anybody, most people, to learn the technique and to be able to do better and excel and do great. But they do need that baseline movement and functional capacity to then be able to do the skill that we're asking them to do. So my big takeaway from this, I hope that you get, is that while I don't necessarily agree with the tests in the presidential fitness test, that because they're tests from 1966, it's older than me. And we have done a lot of research on movement since then. And between Gray Cook and Lee Burton and Kyle Kessel, I think is his last name, they've done a lot of work with the functional movement systems. And there are people who have researched low back pain. Stuart McGill is a person who's done a lot of research on back pain and the effects of sit-ups on disc herniations. So like, it's already been done. It doesn't have to be done more. Like, yeah, the research is old, but it's there. So let's include that into going forward and make a better fitness test and fitness screen. Call it a screen just to see where they're at. So that gives phys ed teachers, cheer coaches, and anyone who's in the fitness world a baseline to be able to build from. Along with this, many people have said, but Gray Cook comes to mind since we're talking him, you can't out-train a bad diet. You need to have a good, healthy diet. You need to get your fruits and vegetables. You need to get good, healthy carbs in. You need to be eating regularly through the day. You need to be hydrating. Side note, I just sampled this product called Rebel Aid and don't get compensation from it, although they did send me some free samples. I want to give it a shout out because it's delicious. It's a lemon lime flavor. It's not too salty. It's got extra magnesium and potassium in it, which is really important for muscle cramping, and it helps us to rehydrate. And I highly recommend it. You can I'll drop that link in my show notes as well. And you can find them on Instagram and follow them. They're friends of mine, and they are parents who saw a need out there for something to make water more enjoyable and give us something to keep our kids hydrated, recognizing it's not just water, but there's electrolytes that are needed also. So it's a great electrolyte drink that's very low in calories and tastes really good. So it makes your kids want to drink it. So check it out. That link is in the show notes. But let's keep talking. We need to be getting all the good nutrients in, and making sure that we're keeping our body healthy. We need to be resting and encouraging kids to sleep and get a good solid 8 hours in. It varies per person, but 8 hours in. These kind of things, this is really important. And I think if we look at the entire process, our kids will be healthier in the long run, our nation and our world will be healthier, and our cheerleaders are going to be better and feel better because of it, and they will likely have less injuries. So I'd love to know your thoughts. Please, either leave me a message in the comments or send me a DM on Instagram at the Cheer PT, and let me know your thoughts and what you think is missing that could be better in these movement screens as well. Thanks for listening. And if you stayed to the end, thank you for my little bit of a political rant. It wasn't big. I think it's going to be interesting when this starts to roll out and how it all goes. So I'm sure I'll talk about it as we go forward in the future. And I hope you have a great day. You got to be able to do these things too. So if you're a parent or a coach and you're asking your kids to do this stuff, can you do it so that you can demonstrate it? And if not, do you have a way to learn how? Everybody can do a push-up. Maybe it's not down on the ground, and maybe it's not 50 of them all at once, but there are ways to modify, not just on your knees. There's ways to do push-up or a pull-up, and there's ways that you can test to build up to that and get yourself stronger. So you guys work at it too. And let's all do that run and not worry about the time. Can you go for a run for, a mile and finish it? It could be a good test for you and see how you feel, but don't do it if you don't feel good or if you have pain. All right, enough preaching for the day. I hope you have a wonderful week ahead. This week I'm actually on vacation from work, and I had to come home from I usually go up to my lake house for the week and just chill, but both of my parents had surgery this week, and my dad had to stay in overnight, so I needed to be home with him. He's somebody that I have to encourage all the time to keep it exercising. And, I'm looking as he's gotten older now, he's in assisted living and he goes to exercise every day. And it kind of crushed me because he can't go and exercise for the next week because of the surgery, and he's going to be fine. But I had to be like, Dad, you need to not do the exercises for a little bit. He's like, I understand, but maybe I'll just go and sit there for a little bit. It's great. It's never too late to change what we're doing and how we move. He's done it. My mother is a champion she's had MS since I was born, and she just keeps plugging away. And although she struggles with all of her movement, um, she keeps kind of plugging forward, and she tries to walk. And when she starts to do this stuff and starts to get her exercises in, she starts to feel better. So this is a lifelong journey for all of us. I think it's really important, like, to recognize like where we as adults are going, look at where our parents are at, and what do we want to give our kids in that journey so that they are better off than we were today, and where our parents are. It's work in progress. So I'm on vacation. I'm gonna go. They're all settled and safe, and hopefully I get a few days at the lake. And I hope, as you guys are going into cheer camps and you are transitioning into school around the country in the next couple of weeks and into full-on choreography, etc., I hope you remember to hydrate, remember to get your rest, and remember just to enjoy the process and have fun with it along the way, because that's what makes us healthy at heart as well. Have a great week. Don't forget, when in doubt, breathe out. Take life one step at a time. You can do anything you put your mind to, including that 1 mile test and a pull-up. And as my friend Drew Kelleher said, you're responsible for your own vibes. So go get the day.